I will admit everybody now. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Discovering the CS webinar. Hello again, and welcome everyone to our Discovering the CS Pathway webinar series. I'm going to give people a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
While we wait, I'm going to throw in the chat the instructions that Mark had that he sent out yesterday in case people missed that, especially the how to get the app.
Thanks, Dave. And in true extension fashion, I'm coming from another place, so I'm trying to get this new to change gears here.
Also, I just wanted to let everyone know that this session is being recorded. So if you have any colleagues that couldn't be here today, that's okay. It will be recorded. And this is going to finally end up on our current Click to Science education, Click to Computer Science education site. So that's where it's going to be living in the future. And I'll also, as I have the floor, I will introduce myself. My name is Gabriela Barrow. I'm an account manager here at 4-H Council. And I manage part of the STEM portfolio that 4-H has, in particular regarding CS, computer science education, and other STEM activities. So I'm happy to be here as a part of this and helping to keep these webinars going just to get as much information into the field as possible. I'm joined by my colleague, Dave Francis, who I'll hand this off to introduce himself and kick us off.
Well, welcome everyone. I am stoked because what I love most about the CS webinars is it's a chance to get people that we know are the experts and are doing this with 4-H groups and know their stuff as it relates to what we do versus just someone who may know the product but may not understand 4-H. So this month is no exception. We have, and first off, congratulations when I say Dr. Mark Light. That's a very well-earned but recent congratulations to Mark for that, for finishing up his dissertation and graduating. So Mark is going to join us and he's going to walk us through what he's been doing with Spheros and kind of an overview of what they are and how he's been using that. And so with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Mark Light from The Ohio State University.
Thanks, Dave. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing to have a hype man and be hyped up. So hopefully this is something that is valuable to you and certainly will not be able to cover everything under the sun that we'd like to cover today, but hopefully we can give a good introduction to Sphero and some of the things I've been doing with Sphero. So one of the things is, I'll say up front, is I've done a lot with with robotics in Ohio 4-H, and specifically, I've done work with the Lego robotics with the NXTs and then the EV3s. So that's where I kind of got my start with 4-H and robotics. And when I was on my way to a program one time, I had my little cart and I was trying to load my car, and I was pushing the cart full of Lego kits out the sidewalk, hit a crack, and all around the courthouse square, my Lego kits exploded everywhere. And so one of the things that I like about Sphero is it's electronics, but all of the electronics are packaged in this nice, neat little ball. And there's not pieces. I don't have to construct anything. And it's always been one neat package. So not that I haven't worked with the EV3s still, but I just like that anytime I lend kits out, there would just be pieces missing and stuff. So that's a nice thing. The other nice thing I found is that Sphero does a really good job with price point, I guess, as far as electronics go. They have what's called the Sphero Mini, which is a smaller version of the regular size Sphero. So the Sphero Mini is about the size of a golf ball, and it's kind of in this eggshell, and is charged through a USB. Sphero itself is charged with a charging base, and so I've used Sphero Mini is nice because I can package all these in a little tote and take them with me into a school and have 20 of these little Sphero Minis. But Sphero Mini is about $50 in cost, and this is a Sphero Bolt, and it ranges around 150. So really, it's economical as a 4-H office to get some, but it's also economic if our families want to get the kids like it and they want to invest in something. It's not the $300 that some of the Lego kits tend to cost. So that is another neat avenue. Those of you who are Star Wars fans, Sphero started as a company, and then Star Wars was looking for a new robot for their new movie. And so those of you who are familiar with BB-8, that started from Sphero, and so the difference here with BB-8, it has a little magnetic head that as Sphero rolls around, the magnetic head moves with that, but they helped create the idea for BB-8. And so that is, a lot of times when I'm talking to youth, that's where I go first, is they just say who are Star Wars fans, and typically they know about BB-8. They also came up with a R2 version. And so this moves around, and I use R2 a lot when I'm out at the fair or in a mall or a place where I want to attract kids over to my area. I'll send R2 out and usually interact with the kids and bring them back in. But they're all programmed through the same Sphero app. The last one I'll show you is the Sphero Rover. This is kind of a Sphero tank, if you will. So instead of rolling around in its motion, it has the two treads, which is similar to the EV3s. And it has the ability to, those of you who are familiar with Arduino, you can put Arduino capability and program the Arduino and the rover together to do things together. And so that is something that I'm just now getting used to. The rover's around 250, so it kind of has a variety of different aspects as we get as we go through the pricing again. So rovers take up more space, don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of them. I have 5 of them in our office, but it's a nice thing because they all use the same Sphero EDU app. Okay, and so that's the next thing I want to kind of spend a little bit of time with exploring with you. So it's available on different platforms, but it's also now compatible not only with Apple and Android, but with Chrome books. So a lot of the schools that use Chromebooks, they can Bluetooth into the Sphero and do it as with Chromebook or Chrome OS. And so it's also, they've done a really good job at being cross-programmatic or cross-platform program. So in the Sphero EDU app, there are 2 Sphero apps now. The first one is Sphero Play that you might find, and the second one is Sphero EDU. And they're very much what they sound like. Sphero Play is a lot about play, but you're doing a lot of play and not as much learning. As you do with the EDU, you're doing more of the computer science, the more programming. The Sphero Play, you're essentially kind of remote controlling the Sphero and not necessarily learning how to program the Sphero, which is really the purpose of why we teach coding and robotics, is that idea of we're helping kids learn that it takes humans, but you can have a human who can then program Sphero or the robot to do something. And so I often think that if we teach them the remote control version, and then we're trying to teach the coding version, we've lost them because they're just going to drive it around in the remote control version. So in the Sphero EDU app, if you see down here at the bottom, this is the EDU app, but it still has the remote control version, and that's called the Drive. And so we don't want to show kids the Drive feature because then they'll want to drive right away. So we hopefully keep that hidden in the beginning when you're having kids log on to that. Down the left-hand side, you have home, activities, and programs. And then there's another tab, which is the classes tab, and that allows you as an educator to be able to set up a class and do that with as well. So some questions in the chat box about the different size versus the Bolt. Most of the programming can be done with the Mini. What Sphero is if you take the Mini, I like the fact that you can take it apart, and now that they have the clear ones too, they can see the different components. But basically, it's the wheels that are rolling around inside of the egg. It's weighted at the bottom, and it's lighter at the top. So if you are old enough to remember Weeble Wobbles, the little play characters, they were weighted at the bottom, and you could hit them back and forth, and they would kind of weeble wobble back and forth. As this rolls and the inertia of the weight gets to the top, it wants to roll it again, and so that's what allows it to continue to roll. So for the most part, some of the sensors are the same with this Mini. It has light sensor, or it can create light, and you can do some of the programming there. You can do the movement programming. Sphero Bolt adds this LED screen. So that's one of the differences as you move up in there. But for the most part, if you're just doing a day type programming or doing it as a tech camp type program, the Mini works just fine. I also like the fact that you can plug the Mini in directly through the USB port there, whereas the Sphero has to sit in the base, and so sometimes if it doesn't sit right in that base, it may not charge. Oh, good. So yeah, so Civil Air Patrol, beyond Spheros, they have a lot of different STEM programs and kits that they have available. So if you have those available, you can certainly check them out. All right, so back to our app. There's a sign-in feature. I have the students sign in, and a lot of them will have a Google email because of the Google Classroom that they experience when they're in a school district. So they'll sign in. So I'm signed in to that. The next thing, the neat feature, they have the 3D robotic models, and so we can go look at Mini or at Bolt, and then you can have the kids explore all the different components, and so you can talk about what the different sensors are and how Sphero operates. And so that's 3D model is kind of a neat feature that they've added to that. So activities are activities that have been provided by Sphero, by the community, and then there's a CS Foundations, which is curriculum you can buy from Sphero. But most of the time, between the community and Sphero, I can find different activities, and I assign those activities to my class, which is really my 4-H club that I do Sphero with, and so then they can see that when they are when they log in between meetings, they can see what assignments that I've scheduled for the next time. Okay, so come back on the internet here. Okay, so the other thing on the right-hand side of that is see which Sphero you're connected to. And so the first thing it wants to do is look for a Sphero. Usually the Spheros that are closest to you are going to have the most bars. So once it connects to that Sphero, the Sphero usually lights up. And it becomes connected. Okay, so do I provide the club members with Sphero? I do for the summer, so that they can take Sphero as a 4-H project. I usually Sphero app they can do on a smartphone. I do have iPads that they can use when they come to the office for our club meetings. But I guess I feel like Sphero is pretty indestructible, so they're not going to break it necessarily. And if they don't have one at home, I don't want it to be a limiting factor. So I got some of my Spheros through a grant, and I have the ability to lend them out. Okay. So I think I lost my camera here. So I want to be able to show you some of the programming that you can do with these. So the first thing I'll show you is the classes. Now the classes you have to access through a web browser. You can't. The students can see them on their So here I have my Hardened Hackers as one of my clubs there. It gives you a course code, and then it lists all the youth names, just first name and middle initial. And then I can click on somebody and figure out what time they spent in the app, which activities they've completed. And so then I can know. I had my meeting last night and some of them missed the meeting. So the nice thing about the classroom is it allows me to be able to do that outside of having the kids there all the time. So that is another neat feature. So activities allow you to see the activity. If you go in, there are kind of instructional videos. You can view the different steps, and it kind of puts them in different order, and then you should be able to start that program. If you jump right into programs, you can take an existing program and modify it, or if you see the little plus key on the side, that's how you start a new program. So the first thing you do is you set a program name, and so we're going to do shapes as our first program. And if you don't have a Sphero, you can see that after our program name, it's going to say, do you want to do draw, blocks, text, or virtual bot? And virtual bot allows you to have, of course, this is a year after COVID when we really needed the virtual bot availability, but you can have kids program Sphero and then be able to do that in a virtual setting. So the virtual bot is on the right side there. So they can then program, hit play, and it shows a little virtual Sphero on the screen. Now, not all the features or commands are available with virtual Sphero, so they become limited, but it does give you some introductory movement things that you can program it to do. So you have the ability to text code. With most of my kids, I start off with the block code. And then the Sphero I have here today is, and then I'm going to hit create. So create kind of gives me that blank slate. And if you've done some kind of computer coding with Scratch or with other types of computer code that's block-based coding, it's very similar. You're going to start with the puzzle piece as your start piece, and then you have the ability to there's different things along the bottom, move, lights, sounds, controls. So it kind of moves from easy programming or easy commands to more difficult commands as it goes across the bottom. So the first thing we want to do is kind of show you how Sphero operates. And so if you want to pull a roll command, or that's kind of the first movement command to be able to show. Is block coding the only type of code available? So no, they can do text-based coding, and so if you look over here on the right hand side, there's the three dots, and if I hit the three dots, I can click on JavaScript code, and the same function that I just put in now appears as the code that is there. So as you I encourage you, as you have kids do the block code, have them toggle back and forth to see what that text code looks like. And you have the ability to copy that code into another program if you find that it's useful there. I use this a lot of times for that late elementary age group. And so I find that the block code is usually where most kids need to start out with. So the first thing is with Sphero, we have to aim our Sphero. And so we're going to put Sphero kind of in the middle of the screen so you can see both at the same time. At the top of the screen, you'll see the little word aim. And when I select aim, it's going to pop up another window. So I'm now connected. So then I see this circle here off to the side. And I also see a blue dot, okay? And so you hold down on the blue dot and you're going to drag it around until that blue dot faces you. And then I know when I'm having it move, it's always going to move in the direction away from me. That's going to be the forward direction, or in this case, Sphero uses that as the 0 direction. So straight ahead is always 0 degrees. And so that is in the aim. So a lot of times when you say, well, my Sphero is not going where I want it to go, it's a lot of times because they need to re-aim that. So as long as they keep the device between themselves and the Sphero, and they don't, if I move to the other side of the Sphero, I need to re-aim because I've reoriented where I am at. If I stay the same place in the room, then the Sphero is going to keep that same orientation. So now that I've aimed my Sphero, I can go back to my program. And so with this, you can just tap on the degrees and you can see how 0 is a straight ahead. So 0 takes us straight ahead. And you can see as I move the degrees, I eventually can go 360 degrees, takes me all the way around. So if I wanted my Sphero to go backwards, I would do my heading as 180 degrees. Okay? If I wanted to make a right turn, I would go 90 degrees. If I wanted to make a left turn, I go 270. Okay? So that is that's usually what the heading would be. Then the next thing I have the ability to pick the speed. And so for the speed, I can start at 0 speed or I can go up to 255. Usually I tell kids to kind of stay in the middle for that because the faster the speed, the shorter their battery life is going to be. So if we want to get through the whole class period of 45 minutes to an hour, we got to keep that speed down. I did find something unique as I was preparing for today. The reason that the high speed is 255 sounds kind of weird, and I've always kind of wondered about it. So 255 is the largest binary number, so number that can be made with zeros and ones with 8 digits. So originally binary was only able to use 8 digits, or 8 bits, if you will, of information. And so the largest numbers that can be made with 0 and 1s was 255. So Sphero kind of uses that both to teach that lesson and ability to actually do talking about that binary system. Relative 255 is just the fastest speed, and if you cut that in half, you're about 120. So usually I try to stay somewhere in the middle for that. And then the other thing is you have the ability to set your time, okay? And usually what I will do is demonstrate. I'll have a yardstick or a tape measure, and I want them to see how long it takes. So this is a little bit of a trial and error to, how far will 1 second go? So they might roll it for 1 second and see that goes like 7 inches or 8 inches. Sphero also uses centimeters and millimeters for a lot of its measurements. So you'll see distance, because distance is affected by speed and time. So Sphero uses speed and time to control that. So you have to know, if I set this as a speed for a certain time, how far will it go? So if I want to go 12 inches and 1 second goes 7 inches, then I have to figure out, okay, it's probably going to be not quite 2, but maybe 1.8, 1.9. So a little bit of trial and error. So once they figure out that, they're able to kind of, based on time, know how far they want to go. So we're going to say that we want to be able to go for 1.9 seconds. So as I do that, I can bring it around here to the floor. And I want to hit start on my program. Oops. And of course, it's going to roll in the opposite direction. Okay. So it rolls, and as it's rolling, data is appearing on the screen. And this is the other way you can connect kids to that. And so it shows that my line wasn't quite straight, had a little bit of a variance, so that could be the floor. You could talk about why that was the case. It kind of shows the pitch and yaw when you think about airplanes and how they orient themselves. It tells that. And then one of the sensors in a Sphero is a gyroscope. And so that is showing some of the roll pitch as it's doing it. And then the accelerometer, how many G's of force is there as it's rolling. So just kind of some neat data that the youth can get. And so I often start off with shapes because that's something visually they can see on the screen. And so the first shape that we usually start off with is a square. And so squares, we know about squares is going to have four different sides to them that are all equal. Okay, is there anything you have to do to enable to get the virtual? I can go up here to the 3 dots and hit sensor data and kind of see for the travel that I did, what kind of data is there, how far did it go, and what it do. And I could download that into a spreadsheet, and you could go. So some of the older kids, you could do some more of the math and the data for different experiments too. Some people say. Okay, so we were creating a square. So for a square, the main thing that changes is what? So the thing that changes is going to be our degrees. So the degrees are what get rid of the glare. So the first degrees that we have is where, so it's moving in the 0 direction. So when we bring our next roll up there, we have to set our speed and our time to be the same because we want the same sides for each of those squares. So this is going to be the same. And one thing is if you tap on the number itself, you're going to use the slide bar. But over here, if I tap on that number over here, I can then put in my speed to be the actual exact same number. Some youth, I always say it's got to be close. It could be close. Doesn't have to be right on the dot. But some kids really like to make sure that it's right. It's always the same. And then the same, we want 1.9 as our speed. So then this is where some youth kind of get they have to think beyond how Sphero works, because the first, if we're making a right turn, then the first degrees we're going to use is that 90. But our next degrees that we'd use is not going to be 90 because our Sphero keeps that same orientation. So if you think about facing forward and moving forward or sidestepping as we're moving. So think of Sphero, when it gets to that first corner, it's going to sidestep to get to the next or side roll, if you will, and then roll backwards to make the third side. So backwards is the 180. Okay. And then our last one is the 270. Okay, and then we select the same.
Yeah.
It should. Here, I've got it. It should go with the packet, so I'm gonna go check and see.
Okay. So there's our program. And again, the speed is going to be roughly the same. I'm going to keep mine in the cradle for now, but it'll still should do the same kind of roll. No, it's not going to be exact. Okay, so I kind of made it what would be a small square. A lot of times kids will put in large amounts of time, and you try to tell them, think about the size of our room, and most times we're going to stay under 5 seconds. Because if you think about how I oftentimes walk the distance, and so I say 1, 2, 3 as I'm walking, and that usually tells me that I'm going to, at 10 seconds, I'm going to be out the door and into another area. And so they want to keep their distances and time in a smaller scale. Now, if you're outside or if you have a big venue, a gymnasium or something, you could do larger things, but for the most part, they want to keep a smaller version of that. So you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to share with you the program. Okay. So this is a similar program. Now, what we found too is that the Spheros is a robot. Robots process things different than humans do. So if we are in a car, we're going to stop. We're going to take our turn signal, put it on, and then we're going to make a right-hand turn. Sphero is just going to roll, and it's going to go right on to that next instruction. So I had 4 instructions. This one actually has a 1 second delay between. And what that does is it pauses at each corner. And so the corners of that square are going to be more crisp and more exact than if it kind of does a rolling stop and keeps moving to the next direction. That square is not going to be as accurate. So you can think about that. Then you can challenge the youth to say, well, how could we do a square in less directions? And so you kind of would introduce the idea of a loop. Here we're starting at a heading of 270. So we're going to make our first turn is going to be to the left instead of to the right, how we made our square. So our square is going to move in that direction and then around this way instead of this way. So here, the difference is we're using the loop, which is the loop is always a purple command. It's under our control area. And what we're doing here is we're saying we want to roll and we want the heading to add 90 degrees, a plus 90. So what it does there is it's actually going to add 90 degrees. So 270 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90 plus 90. So there we have the program is helping determine adding that 90 degrees without even us thinking about that. And then after each corner, again, we delay for the 1 second. And then you see the little arrow down here at the bottom, it loops that down. Here, we're going to have it loop for 8 times, so it makes the square twice. Okay. So that introduces the idea of a loop. And then usually what I would do is I walk them through different shapes. So we start with a square, and now let's make a rectangle. And so for a rectangle, what we do is we're going to change 2 of the sides. So they would change 1 and 3 or 2 and 4. And so that's usually an easy transition for them to grasp is how to elongate their square to make a rectangle. So then you start challenging them a little bit with a triangle or a pentagon or an octagon, something with more sides. And so they would have to then take the 360 and divide by the number of sides to figure out what their angles are going to be. So they would have to adjust their shape based on that as well. The other thing that they can do with shapes, if you think about the old LED screens, and when you had your LED watch and things were made up by just the letters and numbers looked more like a block. If you think about early calculators, that's how the screens were for those. Have them do the letters or their initials and program Sphero to make an M. So my M would go up, it would have an angle down and then an angle back up and then an angle down. So have them, that would be the next challenge after they made a shape is to make the ability to do their letters of their names. And so those activities of using different shapes and styles all play into the idea of the angles. They get the idea of movement. And these programs can all be done with the virtual bot. And what you see when you do the virtual bot, there are less choices at the bottom of the screen for you to be able to program that. Without the virtual bot, you're going to need something to connect to, because as soon as I hit the start, if I don't have a robot, it's going to ask me for a robot. So the software is free to download, but obviously they want you to connect with them by buying that program. The other thing that I have found helpful is Sphero has 4 different kinds of activity mats. And so they have one activity mat that's soccer and space on the other. Then the other activity mat is a cityscape and golf on the other side. So you can do you can do that, and and with those mats come these challenge cards. So you can say you have to take your payload from Earth to go to different planets, and so they have to program their Sphero to go to different planets. The same with the sports related ones. It's going to have you, send the soccer ball or the football across the field, or learn how to pass the ball from one Sphero to the next. So I kind of like the challenge card, and it kind of then gives the ability to do that. But then if they scan the QR code on the front, it takes them to that activity within the Sphero app. So that's another nice feature. But as we know, being an extension, we're often limited on time and money and things like that. So oftentimes we think about, well, what else could I use for golf? And so we create solo cup golf, and you program the ball, and they have to program the ball to go and aim for that cup. Another one that we do sometimes is Sphero bowling, and you can take a marker, set up little pins, and they have to aim the ball to see how many pins they can knock down. You could then keep score, or you can have them create their own game and come up with their own game that they would be able to connect to there. So that, again, Sphero has some of these things that you can purchase, but again, then, I often say, well, what can I do this with as well? The other thing that I just learned recently is you can also, cover your Sphero with the cup and program it to do something. But the nice thing there is that you can now attach things to the cup because you're no longer dealing with a round surface. And so one of the cool things that I saw recently was they took a cup, they took a marker, and several of us have maybe done programming with ArtBots. And now you can have a Sphero ArtBot by taping a marker onto this. So now as I program Sphero to do different patterns, it's creating the art with the marker attached. And the one activity that I saw this specifically with was, they called it Spherograph, but some of us may know back in the day when we didn't have technology, we used Spirograph, and it made the different patterns with the different gears based on how we trace those gears around the paper. We got to make different shapes and different patterns, and the star pattern and such was all part of that. So I thought that was kind of cool. I've also seen, so these are also waterproof. You can take them out in the grass. So they roll around fairly easily on different surfaces. They roll through the water. But the other thing you can do with them is paint. So you can have it roll through paint and make shapes on a piece of paper too. So you can add that art component into Sphero that you may not have had before. And so that's kind of a neat aspect of getting. So some kids are really into the technology, others are going to be into the data, the ability to have the LED screen. If you think about animation, there's some different Sphero programs that are about animation. So the first graphic is the letter M. The next graphic I make is the letter A. The next graphic I make is an R and a K. And then when I play that in sequence, it spells out my name. Or if it's a little character, if you think about the little flip books, you can have the kids who can do animation. So then they can just work with the LED portion of Sphero and do some animation. So a lot of different aspects that is there. The other thing that we're getting a little short on time, but lights and sounds are something is unique. So here's our matrix animation. And if I tap on the matrix screen, it has some pre-built animations. So some of them have like 35 in the sequence, but I can also make my own. So once I make my own, I'm just filling in the little dots to make the animation that I want. So again, some youth may really like that. They may gear into that aspect of that animated aspect there. There's also sounds. So the sound is going to come from the iPad more than it is going to come from the Sphero, but you can have it say different sounds. So if I type the word Mark in there, it's going to say my name. If I don't, it's going to have that. It also has the sounds that are pre-recorded. So here's a random sound, or if I click on that, I can do different effects, make it sound like a robot, or have other aspects of that as well. Okay, I'm gonna pause just a second here. Look if there are any questions, or what other ways maybe have you used Sphero in some of your programs?
I can say one way I've used Spheros is as the engine, if you will, for other devices. And so you can, there is a Spheros attachment. I see Mark has a Spheros attachment that's Lego compliant or Lego compatible. I've used that, as well as just had cardboard and pipe cleaners and other junk that kids have to make their own contraption to then get the Sphero to do a task. Those kind of things work well for us. One of the more inventive game designs I've seen use Sphero as the object that you can code to go through the game board itself. And they actually blended Sphero and Makey Makey to allow for like a seesaw that the Sphero would then make the Makey Makey have a ground connection. And they made some amazing things there. In the chat, Tori has used pool noodles to make a maze and obstructions. So to collect data to make through it. Pool noodles are definitely a huge one. I will say the fact that Spheros are waterproof, especially if you buy the knobby skin that goes over the Spheros to act as paddles, that is really a cool opportunity. I haven't done it personally, but I've seen kids that have made like little trash collectors for the ocean using the Spheros and a little basket behind that floats. And they put objects in like a kiddie pool to sweep through and have to collect trash.
If you think about, sometimes during summer camp, we do the cardboard boat races. So instead of, if you don't have enough cardboard to do the kids in the boats, they could make, with the Sphero and connecting a little raft to that. The challenge is maybe they have to get a payload across the pool or through the water. So that's another way to use those in that way. The other way I saw on Sphero, and there's a lot of different, you have the different activities, but then the other thing I've seen is on YouTube. There's a lot of people that will share their things on YouTube. And if you look at hashtag Thursday Learn Day, and I'll put that in the chat, that is something that then everyone, that's Sphero's regular introduction of new little ideas of ways to use the Sphero taught by the staff. And so one of the Sphero Thursday Learn Days that I saw was kind of a light show. And so you're programming, if you think about some of the fireworks shows that are now done with drones and they all light up to different patterns and things like that, you could have the kids work simultaneously to create a light show where each Sphero is doing its own part within the light show. You turn off the lights, you start them all up, and they all go in a certain pattern. The other thing you could do is break them up into groups and give them a story to have to tell. And so the one I think they used was the Three Little Pigs. And so one Sphero was the wolf, and the other Sphero was the pig. And so the wolf would have to roll to the first house, and then they used the speak and the lights to have that story interaction between the wolf and the pig. And then the pig ran away, so the Sphero, went away. But once they started them all at the same time, then it did that little interaction. So you can do storytelling through Sphero as well. So those are kind of some different ideas as a way to inject coding and Sphero together. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with, and I'm going to, for those that attended today, I'm going to send out some of these programs that we've done today with screenshots and some of the resources that I have, because certainly this is just kind of a scratch the surface type of thing. So this one is rock, paper, scissors. So if you think about that, it's kind of a neat thing. It introduces the kids into what's called an if-then statement. And so if then is kind of a action reaction. So if this happens, then do this. And if this other thing happens, then do that. And so it uses the accelerometer is the first if. So we first put a forever loop, because a game we want to play until we tell it to stop. So we put it in a forever loop. And when the accelerometer is at a value of 1, it's at rest. And so if I set that if the total accelerometer reads greater than 2, that means I've had some kind of motion to my Sphero. And so some games that you could play might be a toss. And so by tossing the Sphero, I'm accelerating it greater than 2, and it's going to go on to the next direction. If I shake it, which is what I'm going to do in this case, it'll go on to the next direction. So the next direction says that I want to create a random number between 1 and 3. And so it generates the number 1, 2, or 3. And so it says, if it's 1, that is the number generated, speak the word rock and show a little matrix animation there that shows rock. Speak the word, if it's number 2, you're going to go say paper. We'll just kind of run this here. And so I'm going to shake my, it goes to the paper, rock, it's liking rock. Finally got to the scissors. So rock, paper, scissors. So we have 3 if-then statements. So if you then wanted to challenge the kids to say, well, what would a die look like if we created a dice? And so that would have 6 sides. So you could have, the graphic for what one side of the dot would look like, what 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And similar thing, you would have it generate a random number, because when we roll the dice, it's usually random. So you could have the kids play a game of Yahtzee, for instance, once they program this. If they played rock, paper, scissors, we only had 4 people last night, so it was a quick game of rock, paper, scissors, but they go around and they could do rock, paper, scissors until they eliminated everybody throughout the thing, and you had a winner with that. So there's several game-like things where they're actually coding a game. And the game is the thing I like about Sphero is, rather than Scratch, where it's more just watching what the game you've created on the screen, you're actually interacting and doing the game in person. So that's kind of just a little bit of a different piece there. But they had several games that were tossing games. one kid really liked pop last night, so soda. So his was Coke, Pepsi, and Mountain Dew instead of rock, paper, scissors. So that was his invention of how he changed that up. So it's a lot of different things. Spheros has also been a company that usually keeps up on their apps and introduces different things. So it's something that the technology, these minis are a couple years old, yet they still are going to keep up with the technology. So they don't usually try to change the technology to change what they're working with. So I think we're at towards the end of our time, so I want to be respectful of that. But any other things that you've done with Sphero that you'd want to share, feel free to do that. Otherwise, I will, like I said, send out the handouts that will kind of help you work through this. But utilize that classroom feature, utilize the different activities that others have created. It's part of that community. Yeah, and then I usually watch the activity, what somebody else came up with, and then I use that as my curriculum to teach the youth. So I kind of become the expert before I have to do that. And then the kids will teach each other as they make modifications to the game and such. We found that it was going rock, paper, scissors really quickly and was jumping to the next one. So then they put a pause or delay so that it stopped that when we did it last night.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. I did have a question. Has anyone done anything with the national but virtual Sphero competitions? Has anyone tried to get involved with those or not? And they're relatively new, so it may not be a thing yet.
And I think when I first was introduced to those, it was maybe either a couple weeks before them, and so it wasn't enough time to get kids engaged in those. But now I think they've been virtual the past 2 years, so I don't know if they'll continue to do them virtually or do some of those in person. But they're definitely there. In Ohio, we have a grant that has provided a number of Spheros across the state. So we're looking at kind of creating a Sphero project. Right now, it's kind of a independent project that kids can take, but eventually we want them to be able to take this as a project that they can learn to program.
Excellent. Well, Mark, we appreciate all the expertise and time. And Gabby will get this up onto our new, I totally lost the name of the website.
Click to Science.
Click to Computer Science.
Computer
Yes.
Science.
I was going to say something with coding, but no, it's Click to Computer Science. Thanks so much, everybody. And we will have a great day.
Thanks again. Take care, everyone.